This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
Real Talkers, we're grateful to have you here on the heels of a big episode. Our exclusive with former Alberta Health Services CEO Athana Mentzelopoulos has inspired significant reaction from you. We've got a flamethrower submission coming up. Of course, every Friday, final episode of every week. That's what this one is. Our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton present the flamethrower, your chance to sound off. And we've got, across the political spectrum, Real Talkers chiming in on what happened down in Minnesota, that ice killing. Everybody knows that story. Everybody's talking about that story. Question is, what are the implications, bigger picture? What does this mean for the future of America? Before you roll your eyes, I personally do think that this is one of those mile marker type moments that can completely change the trajectory of a nation's thinking, of a nation's politics. Maybe you think I'm bonkers. I'll be looking to our live chat today, asking our two feature guests in just a moment what they think about it. We've got flamethrower submissions about Maduro's arrest in Venezuela and the future of American involvement in that nation. We have people chiming in about that big water main break in Calgary. That's impacting a lot of Real Talkers. And of course, many of you are talking about and continue to talk about Alberta's separation as well. So as you can see, and this is no surprise for an engaged, informed audience like this, people are focusing on a lot of things. And that's where we're going to go with Shannon Phillips and Ben Woodfinden today from Meredith Bosencool Phillips. They're going to be giving us their takes on the biggest stories of the year to come. We'll do a political look ahead, and that'll include Pierre Poilievre's leadership review as well. That's coming up in just about, in basically 3 weeks from now. Now, keep in mind, one of our panelists today, Ben, former director of communications for Pierre Poilievre, so he's got that kind of inside look on the strategy behind that office, what makes the leader of the official opposition tick, and the like. So I'm expecting informed takes there, and I would imagine some pushback from his co-pilot today on the Real Talk Roundtable from Shannon as well. We'll see. We'll see where she takes it. Plus, before this episode is done today, friends, we are going to be drawing the winner of the early bird prize for our Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. 10 teams have registered before the New Year's Eve deadline, and one of them will be drawn today. All of their names out of this fancy Real Talk toque. We'll draw one name at random, and that team is going to win Golden Bus transportation from our event to the Oilers game that night. 6 tickets to the game. We're going to cover their entire tab during the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. They won't be paying for burgers and beers. And of course, we'll have more to say about the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic as its January 31st date approaches. This is one of our favorite annual traditions in support of 2 great charities, Kids Sport and Uncles and Aunts at Large. And we do still have room for several more teams. So I'll be telling you how you can register your team before we wrap this episode. This show is happening with the presenting sponsorship from RapidX Financial. You know, the crypto world moves fast, but your trust in an exchange should not be a gamble, and that's why we're partnering with RapidX Financial. They're a made-in-Alberta solution backed by the same experts behind those Rapid Cash ATMs that you've seen across Canada for the last 25 years. RapidX makes it easy to get started with 3 ways to trade. You can use one of their physical crypto ATMs. You can use their over-the-counter desk for discrete, larger value trades. Or, of course, you can check out their secure online platform at rapidxfinancial.com. And because you're hearing about this on Real Talk, there's a special offer for you. If you go to their website, rapidxfinancial.com, use the promo code RYAN50, Ryan50, they're going to knock 50% off fees on all of your online Interac e-transfer trades. So that's a huge savings for you. Fantastic stuff. RapidX is secure, it's FinTrack registered, and critically, and this is a huge deal, if you know Bitcoin, you know this, RapidX is non-custodial, meaning you're always going to control your keys. That's rapidxfinancial.com with the promo code RYAN50. Real talk, real Bitcoin. Before we welcome Shannon Phillips, Ben Woodfinden, let's recap our conversation with Athana Mentzelopoulos. For about a year, she was the CEO of Alberta Health Services, hired by Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith, then fired by that same government when she says she wouldn't shut down an internal investigation into alleged procurement scandals. Now, the government says that she was alarmingly incompetent, and they're fighting this out in court right now. Mentzelopoulos is suing the Alberta government for $1.7 million, a wrongful dismissal suit, essentially. She's not done a long-form interview up until yesterday, until the 8th of January, when she sat down with me right here in our Real Talk studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse, downtown Edmonton, for an extended length interview. If you listened to it, if you saw it already, you know, about 90 minutes. We got into it all. The investigation itself, or at least what she can talk about now, this ongoing intimidation campaign, these two podcasters that are coming at her with salacious allegations, and then her thoughts on the future of healthcare delivery in Alberta. There was a lot to say. You've had a lot to say about it in response. I want Shannon and Ben's take on this, at least at a surface level. But before we do, here's a quick recap from Athana Mentzelopoulos.
When I first started at AHS in December of 2023, it was just on the heels of Danielle Smith having said she was going to send Adriana LaGrange to walk around hospitals and fire people if she thought they weren't doing their job. That was kind of my entry point into AHS. I think any human being would understand the kind of impact a comment like that has. There's been so much criticism of AHS, and it's really lamentable. I made a decision to fight back. I probably was a pain in the butt for a lot of people because I believe taxpayer money like my own, and I'm personally pretty stingy. I was trained in fearless advice, faithful implementation. That's what you want from public servants. You want people who are going to work their can off and make sure that elected officials are getting the best possible advice so that when they make the decision, because they have the privilege to make those decisions, maybe it's a curse sometimes, that they have the best advice. And I think that if people believe in the public service, at the senior ranks in particular, that giving their best advice is going to ruin their life, I don't think that's what you want from the public service.
If an independent public inquiry were called tomorrow, what do you think would be the single most important or significant document or testimony that you think might fundamentally change how Albertans understand what happened at AHS, or maybe what's happening at AHS?
If you read the WWIII report, one of the first things that he says, and it's in a letter that he attached at the beginning of the report to Danielle Smith, he actually talked about AHS employees. And he talked about current employees. He wasn't talking about me. And he was very, very complimentary of the AHS employees that he talked to. And in some ways, I actually think that was the most important part. The thing that I regret about being in the situation I'm in is that it does seem to have triggered more criticism of people at AHS, and they don't deserve that. There are wonderful people at AHS who are so committed to what they're trying to do, and they are working in really difficult circumstances much of the time. I think there would be a lot of people at AHS who would have something very important to say about all of this.
Morgan in our live chat says she hopes that when this is all said and done, you'll write a book. Are you considering writing a book?
She's not the first person who has suggested that. And if you think about everything that's happened in the last year, for folks who have followed this closely, I think the challenge would be that a book, fiction or nonfiction, has to be believable. And there's just so much that has happened that is unbelievable.
Unbelievable, says Athana Mentzelopoulos in that Real Talk exclusive. As we welcome back to the program in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, two of the faces of Meredith Bosenkohl-Phillips, Shannon Phillips, former Parks Minister, of course, Environment and Parks Minister in the province of Alberta. She has seen cabinet, she has seen opposition, and Ben Woodfinden, Ben, up until mid last year, or at least spring of 2025, was the Director of Communications for Pierre Poilievre, and he's now adding his talents and his insights into the team at MBP. Welcome back to the both of you. I know that I'm breaking the rules past January 7th and wishing you a Happy New Year, but I don't give a shit. I'm doing it. Happy New Year to you both, and welcome back.
Happy New Year, Ryan. It's a great prairie tradition to basically keep Happy New Year going until, I don't know, at least almost the end of January.
Well, I think like our Ukrainian friends are still going to be celebrating. Everybody's got big weekends coming up. And so I'm
That's
sort
right.
of like, we've still got our Christmas trees up here in the studio. We'll refer to them as our holiday decor.
Well, this is why it happens on the prairies. This is a prairie thing that we do.
Yeah, so it works. Ben, we'll acknowledge your wheelhouse, for the most part, is federal politics, and we're going to lean on you for insights through this episode. I'll ask you a bit about what you heard from the former AHS CEO, but Shannon, obviously, you know Alberta politics inside out. It's, for the better part of your career, it's been your job to understand the inner workings and public sentiment. What did you make of what you heard there from Athana?
Well, it's useful to back up the truck a little bit here. Athana Mentzelopoulos was brought in as the finance deputy minister by Jason Kenney, essentially to implement his agenda as someone who I think it's fair to say shared his values a little bit more. When she talks about the independence of the public service, she was someone who was brought in essentially to kind of be a counterbalance to some of that. There were specific ideological reasons why she was brought into the Department of Finance. So, I was a finance critic at the time. And there's no question that, we did not see eye to eye on things like changing the age payment dates. Which was tremendously disruptive to thousands of people, and that Mentzopoulos was the person who had to, defend that decision at public accounts, and she did so poorly. I caveat my, I'm going to caveat my comments with, I don't know if we were to go into government in 2023, if Athana Mentzelopoulos would have been an important part of it. In fact, quite the opposite. Having said that, when I watched her comments yesterday and her extended interview, and particularly that last couple of sentences about the book that she said, I felt a tremendous amount of personal sympathy for her and what she has gone through. Regardless of what you think of her ideological predisposition, I certainly have my thoughts. She has been put to hell and back for essentially her crime is serving the people of Alberta in the way that the elected people, in a way that reflects the values of the elected people. And for that, she has been dragged through the mud, personally intimidated, and had to, I imagine, go through a tremendous amount of personal expense and hassle, and probably a lot of really negative, sort of emotional journey. And for that, I have been there, and I just have all the time in the world for the story that she told yesterday, despite my misgivings about her ideological predispositions.
I thought that was a very fair assessment of the interview. Yeah, so I want to circle back on something you said, though. Had the NDP formed government in the most recent election, are you suggesting that Athana Mentzelopoulos would have been fired regardless?
I don't know. I mean, who knows? I like a lot of these people, who were brought in for ideological reasons by Mr. Kenney. Some of them were really good, and some of them weren't. And so I think it would have depended on her and the circumstances and whatever the premier thought. But because the people we inherited, some of them were brought in, even from political staff into the civil service by the previous PCs, and some of them were really good, and some of them were not. And that's the thing about the civil service. Right, is many of them are really good at checking their own, personal views at the door and just serving the government of the day, and some of them are not. So I think it would have depended. Certainly, there were a few things, the performance at public accounts and so on that certainly didn't, weren't a great letter of reference for me. This was back when Kenney was going to mow, the provincial budget down by 10 or 15% and do so on the backs of, AHS recipients and so on. But, that's all old news. The new news here is that she was there to serve the government, and for her troubles of upholding the public interest, she has been sent to hell and back. And to my mind, that is a stinging indictment of how we run the civil service, how we run government, how we uphold the public interest in this province, and just what kind of tolerance we have, not just for grift and procurement bullshit, but also how we treat people.
Christine in our live chat powered by Park Power says that either during or following our conversation with Ms. Mentzelopoulos, Christine says, I donated to Athana's GoFundMe yesterday. She says her legal expenses have to be enormous. That's probably an understatement. She says, my heart goes out to her. She says, this isn't about Athana's political ideology. She's been dragged through hell. Which is kind of what you alluded to, Shannon, as well. I got a text from a buddy, and I won't. I'm not sure. I think that when he texts me, that indicates that he's rather not have it read on the show, or at least attributed to him. But I thought, one of the comments that probably resonated most about it was when he said her hesitation in the interview. The genuine fear, or maybe even PTSD, that was evident on her face, despite making her a tougher guest to interview. It made her come across as credible and genuine. He went on to say, none of us, this is a guy, by the way, writing in from British Columbia. He says, none of us, where Ms. Mentzelopoulos also was Deputy Minister of Finance.
That's right.
He says, none of us would want to face down an entire provincial government. He says the personal cost is palatable. I don't know that people would really understand what that would be like.
I could feel that PTSD coming off her. I guess we shouldn't psychologize, but
sure.
I guess in the, not in the direct clinical sense, but in the hesitation and in the carefulness. Obviously she has active legal proceedings as well. I've been there. I get it. And I felt a tremendous amount of sympathy for her on a personal level.
Ben, she said something interesting during the interview, and this is more just on a theoretical level that I want to pick your brain on this. One of the things she said that, to be honest, impressed me most, I was near the end of the interview. I'm asking her about her thoughts on Alberta moving to this dual practice healthcare delivery system, kind of this public-private hybrid. And she said something, and I'm paraphrasing. I don't have the exact quote, but she basically said, in decisions like this, I believe that, senior executives need to look at the math. We said we need to look at the numbers. We need to look at the data and not be driven by ideology. And I thought, gosh, if more people could apply that sort of a thing to their thinking, I guess across our lives, to be honest with you, but in particular in politics and business, do you think that that's a reality in Canadian politics right now? Like, how many decision makers, you can talk about the elected ones or those advising them, are actually looking at data and numbers and math and evidence as opposed to being driven by ideology?
Look, I think in an ideal world, that's what you would want decision makers doing. But I'm quite leery and wary of people that say, "Oh, I just look at the facts. I just look at the numbers. I don't look at ideology." Because even when you're looking at those statistics, those numbers that in theory are neutral, just raw presentations of data and facts, the decisions you're making are still going to be ultimately involve kind of value judgments and stuff like that. So it's not that, look, we shouldn't be consciously making every decision ideologically, but you should think of the kind of fancy word that philosophers and academics will use for ideology is something like a heuristic. It's it's a tool to guide you in a complicated world and just help you kind of give you some priors that help inform decisions you make. So look, we should be making decisions that are informed by facts and statistics and things like that. But I actually think the people that are most likely to tell you that, I don't have any ideology, I rationally assess things. It's what you're actually doing there is consciously or not smuggling in assumptions and priors that they're still ideological. You're just saying otherwise. I'm not accusing anyone of doing that here specifically, but I just say one more thing on this. I think as we look, that Canadian healthcare system is undoubtedly buckling under pressure right now and struggling. And I think the kind of reforms you're seeing in Alberta, I think this is probably just the first wave of these kinds of things. And I think different provinces will take different approaches to this. But I suspect in the years to come, as we're dealing with aging populations, we're dealing with aging healthcare infrastructure as well, things like that, and fiscal challenges, that there's going to be more and more reforms attempted because I don't think we've got much choice. And so I suspect things like just various kind of, especially when it comes to procurement, stuff like that, there's going to be issues like this going forward, because it just, as pressure is put on the healthcare system and reforms take place, there's going to be moments of friction like this.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I do my best to point out that there are political issues that are in some cases unique to different jurisdictions, different provinces. Alberta Health may have some issues that are most predominant or even exclusive to Alberta, but some of these issues are prevalent nationwide. Some of them are prevalent globally. I mean, when you talk about surgical wait times, ER wait times, nobody in Canada is like nailing it, right? Shannon, is Ben on to something? Are we entering an era of alternative thinking, alternative delivery? You think that the Canadian people are open to this? That the Canada Health Act and Canadian universal healthcare and universal access to healthcare has been like, it's like a sales tax in Alberta. It's like this sacred cow. You don't mess with it. You don't touch it, right? It's political suicide.
I think that healthcare challenges and fiscal challenges are going to have to, I think, be taken more seriously, both through the federal spending power and through the percentage of budget given to it by provincial governments. And essentially what that's going to mean is that the public is going to have to say, we want more services. Now, if you want more services that are at generally speaking, lower cost for both government and individuals, generally speaking, the single payer system, that single insurance program, is the lowest cost way to deliver that. Now, who is billing in to that a public payer? That is a question, I think, for some of that more careful policy work, and whether some of these privately contracted places can actually achieve lower costs. The evidence, quite frankly, is that it doesn't. And it's not just sort of international evidence, which is really easy to sort of cherry pick and have apples to oranges stuff. But I'm talking about evidence from Alberta, going back into the 1990s when we have experimented with some of this private delivery. It does not result, generally speaking, in lower costs to the system or to the individuals. Now, what we've got is a brand new quote unquote innovation, which is being able to charge people privately. And being able to bill in two different systems, which opens the door to private insurance, of course, or privately insured services. It opens the door to private pay in Alberta. And generally speaking, what we see is that the evidence it means it does not redound to the cost-saving benefit of either government or individuals. So yeah, we should have an evidence-based conversation about this. And the evidence is so far in Canadian context with how we deliver healthcare within this decentralized federation where provinces have jurisdiction over it, that it doesn't result in lower costs. Now, when I say taking it more seriously, we do have to have a conversation about fiscal capacity to deliver these services. And you're not going to do that based on the way that we have structured both our personal and corporate income tax regimes.
I'm going to run out of...
You're not going to pay for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and this is a conversation that we'll probably have like 30 times over the next 12 months, to be honest with you, and so we don't have to solve it all here, but I sure appreciate both of your takes on it. Ben Woodfinden and Shannon Phillips, our guests in our Friday Roundtable, presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. I'm not going to ask the two of you for forensic analysis, for sort of like criminal defense or sort of prosecutorial expertise in this story out of Minnesota. I'm showing it on my screen right now. I have mixed feelings about showing it, but it feels like everybody in the world has seen this. I mean, obviously a horrific killing of a 37-year-old Minneapolis woman, an American citizen by the name of Renee Good, by an ICE officer. You see it there, who fired into her vehicle as she attempted to leave the scene of what is now probably one of the most powerful and impactful citizen shot videos that's ever hit social media. To be honest with you, the impact of this story, I think, is massive, and I've got my own thoughts on it, including the response from the President of the United States, Kristi Noem, J.D. Vance, the Vice President, and the like. It's, in a way, I mean, to state the obvious, I think that this is continuing to divide American people. But I want to put this in front of both of you for just your general observations and bigger picture. The focused question I want to ask you is what sort of an impact you think that this tragedy in Minneapolis may have, is having, or will have on the direction of American politics, the temperature of discourse, political partisanship in the United States, and the like. Shannon, you want to take this one first?
I think, well, there's a really good analysis frame by frame that the New York Times put out that I recommend to people.
We'll show that on the screen right now, Shannon.
Yeah. And to my mind, the biggest thing that I take away from this is the lies that were told afterwards. The straight, just bilious lies that were, especially by the Vice President of the United States, and the facility with which he lied, with which Christine Nome lied, the kind of language that they used, domestic terrorists, this other kind of stuff. Why does that matter to us as Canadians? Because the quickness to lie about deploying violence for is we're right on the doorstep of it. We're right on the doorstep of whatever's going to happen in Greenland. We're right on the doorstep of conversations about 51st state, and we're very, very close to being the target of some of these lies. And to me, it looks like an inflection point, like the murder of George Floyd was, which was just a few blocks from where this happened in Minneapolis. And I think we maybe are on the verge of something else when it comes to just even politics within Minnesota, targeting of, in particular the Somali population there. MAGA seems to think they've got something with the resignation of Tim Walz and 2 open Senate seats. And I think I really despair for how the local politics are going to go down within the borders of Minnesota as well.
Ben, where's your head at on this?
Yeah, I have maybe a strange take on this. When this happened, my kind of social media feeds, there was 2. I try to honestly try and cultivate a kind of mixed feed. I have friends on both sides, and something I found very perplexing was the kind of stuff that my algorithms were feeding me. It was different. Like there's the video you showed there. There's plenty other videos I want to say that I've seen, different clips, different angles. And what I find kind of depressing about this is I think this is just the world we live in now in social media, where I think people can find video. I think it's pretty clear what happened. I think the video you showed kind of illustrates it, but there's other angles that can be used to show maybe a different interpretation of events. And I think people are just gonna, especially in a hyper-polarized kind of environment, a lot of people are gonna watch that and they're just gonna basically try and find a video that confirms whatever they want to be true. And I think I don't like words like post-truth necessarily, but I do think there's something deeply depressing about the fact that a good chunk of the American population will watch that, and without even having seen the video, they'll have already made up their mind about what happened and who's right and who's wrong. And then to see people like the vice president and the president go out and the kind of language they used is quite shocking, to be honest with you. And so I honestly don't have any specifics when it comes to the event itself, but I do think the reaction from both sides just kind of show you that there is the world we live in now, kind of social media environments we live in now. It's very easy to predetermine what you think about something and then find things to back that up. And I think we've lost kind of the mainstream. I'm going to say mainstream. I think we've lost the kind of common kind of set. We increasingly don't share the same facts and the same interpretation of events, and then it leads people to have very different takes and opinions on things. And I think it's a recipe for very nasty, very polarized politics. And I think this is just going to be another example of that. You've seen protests, but I think you've got a good chunk of the population there that will just kind of, they'll either move on or they'll decide in their heads what happened here, and they'll just they're unlikely to change their minds.
Yeah, I think you're bang on, and I think that it's interesting. Like when you ask about the impact, or when you debate or discuss about the impact that this will have on America, you think of like these big events that can like kind of turn the tide, or when folks will say enough is enough, like these political tipping points, so to speak. And you wonder about the impact this will have. This is an American citizen. This is a mother. This is, this is like, this was not, use the supercharged language around the illegal aliens or the whatevers. This was not her. And I don't think that any serious person, Ben, you're 100% right. There's actually there's one grainy video angle in particular shot from quite a distance that does make it look like the ICE agent is kind of like almost either getting his feet run over or like right kind of in front of the car. It's been suggested that may be the video. This is really giving the benefit of the doubt to Donald Trump and Kristi Noem in particular, but that may have been the video that they had seen before she referred to it as an act of domestic terrorism, which I think is like just an insult. Shannon, your whole face just dropped when I said that, but like that's, I just think, an insult to everybody to call it that, to suggest the ICE agent's life was in danger. There are multiple video angles that'll show little things. We're not forensic analysts. I'm not going to get into this, but like the tires were turned away from the ICE agent. She had waved other vehicles past. There are obvious fucking things that I will not even entertain some of the comments from people trying to justify this. But like you said, the language from the highest halls of power. I mean, Johnny, why don't we tee this up from the vice president, from J.D. Vance? I mean, language like this, and I'll get your take on this in just a second. You very rarely hear, like, in particular, senior political leaders making comments like absolute immunity, in part probably because of the tone that it sets. But here's the vice president of the United States.
The precedent here is very simple. You have a federal law enforcement official engaging in federal law enforcement action. That's a federal issue. That guy is protected by absolute immunity. He was doing his job. The idea that Tim Walz and a bunch of radicals in Minneapolis are going to go after and make this guy's life miserable because he was doing the job that he was asked to do is preposterous. The unprecedented thing is the idea that a local official can actually prosecute a federal official with absolute immunity. I've never seen anything like that. It would get tossed out by a judge. So what I'd like Minnesota to focus on is the real issue, that they're encouraging people. Minneapolis officials are encouraging people to commit violence against ICE officials.
Shannon?
Well, look, if you have absolute immunity, then I guess summary execution for perceived slights it is now legal.
Yeah.
And that's the case that Mr. Vance was making. It is not the case. And it portends very, very wicked things to come for the United States, with billions upon billions of dollars coming into the ICE and Border Patrol budgets this year. And clearly a view that if you step offside the regime, violence will come your way.
In our live chat powered by Park Power, Ms. KD says every level of police, including ICE, the manual states, and this was confirmed, by the way, when it comes to Department of Homeland Security official policy, it is officially the policy of DHS that agents are not to discharge firearms simply to stop a fleeing suspect. That's been confirmed. Ms. KD says the manuals say that discharging your weapon at a vehicle is not justifiable. She says, keep in mind, bullets can ricochet. Bullets can cause harm to innocent bystanders. Meantime, East Coast Stoners watching says, drive away from the police when they tell you to get out of the car. That's a crime. I don't know when we made ICE agents or police officers judge, jury, and executioner that if you're committing any level of crime, they're going to make a decision on a moment's notice whether or not to shoot you in the face, East Coast Stoner. I mean, I can't believe, I really can't wrap my mind around, I can't convince myself that people actually believe that that is justifiable force. I think, to me, this is just people going to the wall unconditionally based on their support for a politician for whom they have planted their flag. Emily says, if you're going to defend this, I have no words that won't get me banned from the chat. Aaron says this is revisionist history in real time. Plain Power says 3 agents yelling different instructions to this woman while pointing weapons in her face. 80s Fanify says, let's not forget that ICE agents denied her medical help. There's video evidence that there was a civilian, a physician on site pleading for access to the woman to check her pulse, to do what they could. It was 15 minutes until medical help arrived. Christine says a shocking response to this murder in Minnesota from members of the Trump government. Zero compassion, zero responsibility. What's happening in the United States is horrifying. This was the taking of an innocent woman. You can keep your comments coming to talk@ryanjespersen.com. We're talking to Ben Woodfinden and Shannon Phillips from Meredith Bosencool and Phillips, where they make better policy. You can check out mbpolicy.com for more on what their team does. When we come back, I want to ask them about what's going down in Venezuela. Pierre Poilievre has a looming leadership review. And have you seen this? Premier Doug Ford in Ontario is asking Mark Carney to not lift the tariffs on Chinese EVs. What does that all mean? We'll get to it before this episode is up. First, I want to let you know that this is happening, this whole show, with the support of our friends at Friesen Brothers. We mentioned Ukrainian Christmas. Shout out to everybody that's going to be celebrating this weekend. Friesen Brothers has a very special celebration going on. You can learn more about it at friesen.com. That's FRESON.com on the 10th and 11th of January. An all-you-can-eat buffet Ukrainian cuisine is being celebrated at your local Friesen Brothers Fresh Market stores, plus High Prairie. That's Edmonton Rabbit Hill, Edmonton Glenora, Stony Plain, Hinton Hill, High Prairie, Peace River, Fort Saskatchewan, and Drumheller. January 10th to 11th, 4 to 8 p.m., $25 per person, and all-you-can-eat menu. Check out Friesen.com for more. If you're not already following UCAN Youth Services on Instagram, I want to encourage you to do so. We're thrilled to be supporting UCAN as our charity of choice in 2026, and they've just posted a video, the thank you video, which you can check out. This is powerful stuff. These are UCAN participants. These are young adults between 17 and 24 that have participated in these Earn While You Learn programs. They're getting ready to enter the workforce. Many of them are stepping out of high-risk lifestyles, or at least they're finally finding some direction, and they're finding confidence too. The stories are powerful. You can find them all at Instagram.com/UCAN Youth Services. Just look for @UCAN Youth Services on Instagram or ucan.ca online. Athabasca University is ready with open arms to welcome new students in 2026, regardless of when your post-secondary journey may begin. It's always the right time at AU because their world-class accredited online degrees and courses are designed so you can complete your education whenever and wherever it works for you. That means you can start your undergrad, your MBA, whatever it is you're doing in January, in February, in March, in April. You get the idea. You can learn more about the AU Advantage, start the application process, learn about financial supports and more at athabascau.ca. And our friends at Play Alberta, we made the announcement yesterday, are presenting Real Talk Night in the Play Alberta Suite on the 21st of March. It'll be the Edmonton Oilers hosting the Tampa Bay Lightning. You can qualify to win 2 tickets to Real Talk Night in the Play Alberta Suite at Rogers Place by sending us your Alberta Wins story. Every Thursday, courtesy of Play Alberta, we celebrate a story of an Albertan win on the national or international stage, whatever it is, a story out of your community, somebody you know that's really making Alberta proud. Send it to us in an email to talk@ryanjespersen.com. Make sure you have Alberta Wins in the subject line. You know, Albertans are winning every hour at playalberta.ca and on the Play Alberta app. And it's all the revenue that happens there is staying right here in the province. If you like what you're hearing on that, download the app today to get started with casino, sports, and lottery all in one app. You've got to be 18 or over to play. And if you do decide to gamble, please use your game sense. Ben Woodfinden and Shannon Phillips joining us from Meredith Bosencool and Phillips. Of course, the United States moving in and arresting Venezuelan dictator Maduro, now facing serious charges. Obviously, has appeared already before a lower Manhattan judge. It's been probably the story of the week, and that's saying something globally, and at risk of over discussing this story without new details. Now that I have the two of you sitting here, I've got to ask for your general takes, either the future of Venezuela with American involvement there, but even more in particular, what this means for Canada. A lot of people are focusing on oil, but it's much bigger than that, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, well, look, I'm going to do a shameless plug here for our own podcast that we do, the MVP Intelligence Briefing. We had to be out later today, and we did a long discussion with Rory Johnston on kind of the impacts on the Canadian oil industry, and I think it's been over discussed. I think there's two kinds of ways to approach it. There's the broader question of what this means for kind of rules of the game, global order, America's increasingly kind of revanchist kind of role in the world and how it sees itself. That I think something that was pretty obvious to us now. The Trump administration released this national security strategy document at the end of the year last year that I think got a fair bit of attention at the time, but it's still just a document, right? But one of the things it talks about is this hemispheric dominance and America basically claiming the entire Western Hemisphere. The Monroe, going back to the Monroe Doctrine, and then adding this Trump corollary, what Trump himself called the Donroe Doctrine, and this idea that they own this hemisphere, that the entire Western Hemisphere belongs to them. And I think this is what that looks like in practice, right? It's not just words. There really is some sort of strategy here. And I think there's something that I've noticed in the last year or so. I think, like many people, I assumed that kind of Trump 2.0 was going to be similar in a lot of ways to Trump 1.0. And I think one thing that was true of Trump's first term was that it was bumbling, right? It was kind of chaotic and messy. Didn't seem like they had structure and staff in place. There was constant turnover, and I don't know how much they actually managed to accomplish on or that interfered in a pretty substantial way on a kind of policy agenda. Trump 2.0 is very different. It's just an observation. It's not, I'm praising them for this, but they clearly have the kind of personnel and the ideas and the policies now, and they are proving pretty effective at implementing them. And I think that it's a big difference between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0. And that is, we're seeing the effects of this here now. And I think the other thing I don't think you can ignore here, and this obviously has direct significant ramifications for Canada, is I think they mean business on Greenland. I wouldn't bet money on them actually doing anything militarily there, but I don't think this is just a pie in the sky idea that Trump has just floated once or twice. I think there's a serious, they tried to appoint a special envoy whose job is to basically acquire Greenland, and I think they are very serious on this. And I don't know what's going to happen on that, but if Greenland does become a formal kind of American territory, that means that it's a big geopolitical implications for Canada and our north, right? Where it means that there's increasingly opening Northwest Passages, all sorts of important shifts taking place in the Arctic, and the Americans have, if they basically control access at one end and access at the other end, which is sort of what they would get if they got Greenland. It changes kind of the security architecture and the entire dynamic in the Arctic, and that obviously has big implications for us. So I don't want to belabor the point here, but there's big implications here.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you about Greenland. Folks, keep in mind, Ben's here certainly as someone with a great working knowledge of where the conservative perspective and strategy has been. Earlier this week, Ben, on the 5th of January, we talked to Sabria Devetti, who was most recently a senior advisor for Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. She offered her comments, and she honed in on the Northwest Passage as well, and in particular, talking a lot about Russia. So if people want to check out that episode, you'll get two interesting takes on the same subject matter. Shannon, your head, what's like the number one thing you're thinking about? Where's your head at on this one?
Well, when the invasion happened, I thought about two things. Number one, the people, and number two, what does this mean for Canada? That's obviously, as someone who has constituents here, or had for many years, for 9 years. I mean, I even had Venezuelan diaspora constituents even in little old Lethbridge, Alberta, right? Folks have come to this country from all over the world, and one of those places is Venezuela. Over the last 20 years of the regime depriving people of prosperity, of freedom, of economic development, and so on. And so, I think that the diaspora is going to, many of whom probably supported getting rid of Maduro. He was not a nice guy. He was a total piece of shit. So, nobody is shedding a tear for him. But lo and behold, Mr. Trump did not say the word election once in his comments. And, the hundreds of political prisoners that remain detained by that regime are still there. All of the military apparatus and repression apparatus remains intact. There has been no regime change in that sense. And the people of Venezuela will continue to suffer. Now, what does a lot of this mean for Canada? And it feels sort of bloody-minded to switch over to oil markets. But look, this is one of our biggest exports, or it is our biggest export by dollar value, and it's Venezuela's biggest export, and they're both heavy crudes. So, whatever you might think of the oil industry, that is a fact. And it's something that we're going to have to grapple with as Canadians. It does mean that more energy export independence from the United States is probably a good idea. It does mean that, at least in the short and medium term, and it does mean that we're going to have to think pretty critically about just how our energy security works in this country, because we have built up a certain way of doing things, trading relationships reliant on the United States. And this even matters in going into the CUSMA negotiations with guaranteeing our supply with them. But look, this means very, very serious things for our oil markets, but also our own geopolitical security. So that's where my head was at, and there was a really, really deep dive that we did on MVP intelligence just last night with Roy Johnston from Commodity Context, and he's been doing a lot of media as well. He's Canadian based, but he can give you a global interpretation of how oil markets work, and I think it's worth our time as Albertans and as Canadians, because a good chunk of our public services and our prosperity comes from the export of that commodity.
I'll let people know that they can find the MVP Intelligence Briefing podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe to this. You'll hear from Ben and Shannon, Tyler and Ken, the entire team at MVP. And of course, once you download it, once you have a listen, make sure you rate it and review it. That really helps podcasts, especially these ones that are startup. You guys are like 12, 13 episodes in, right? Like, this is relatively new.
Yeah, we usually, it's more for our clients and subscribers, Ryan, but every once in a while we unpaywall one.
Yeah.
Because we think it's a really important conversation, and the conversation we had about Venezuela fits that category.
Yeah. We're at time. Do you guys have 5 more minutes to touch on 2 more stories, or do you have stuff you got to get to? Can I keep you for 5 more? Shannon, how's your schedule looking? Yeah, I'm putting you in a tough spot live right now. You're okay. Well, we'll get to this real quick. I want to point out the difference, a subtle difference in these 2 headlines. Check out my screen at theglobeandmail.com. Ontario Premier Ford asks Carney not to cut tariffs on Chinese EVs. On the CBC's website, Ford warns Carney not to cut tariffs on Chinese EVs. There's big meetings coming up next week as the Prime Minister of Canada aims to repair the relationship with Beijing. Ben, what do you make of this from Premier Ford? Obviously protecting Ontario's auto industry. Canada currently imposes a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs. Where does this go, and what's the best move for Ontario and Canada?
Yeah, look, I think there's some. I think the obvious point here is that Ford is protecting. Ford has been, I think, a very loud champion of Ontario's auto industry, and credit to him for doing that. I think there's a broader picture here that. So first off, the reason we imposed these tariffs was kind of we to align ourselves with the Americans. There was an argument for us to do it ourselves, but there was part of the impetus for doing this in the first place was to align ourselves with the Americans, and so I think that's part of where there's kind of maybe a tension and contradiction now. But is it really? How much do we want to align ourselves with them, depending on how they treat us on other fronts, especially on the auto front. But then there's a bigger. I think if you're someone that's driving around in North America, and the EVs that you're seeing on the road they're Teslas, they're various manufacturers that are bringing out their own electric vehicles. In the last kind of decade or so, the Chinese have actually they've pumped a lot of money, a lot of investment into battery research, into EVs themselves, and the Chinese market now. Chinese cars never really took kind of hold of ICE in combustion engines. Basically, what the Chinese did was speed ahead on EVs, and I think something about 70% of battery production in the world now is done by the Chinese. And then you have companies like BYD and CATL who are kind of dominant players in the global EV market. And I think part of the reason we are worried about them ever coming into Canada is because they are producing, there's the security concerns about this as well. But there's these cars, they're producing, affordable electric vehicles, and it's quite frankly, they're cheaper. And I don't want to, I'm not an expert on EV quality and battery quality, but these are not just kind of junk cars that aren't fit for service on our roads. There's the Chinese have very much got ahead and figured stuff out on this, where it poses a threat, I think, to our auto industries. And I think this is I think that the tariff question here for Carney is a short-term, an immediate kind of question on this front. But if we're in a world in which if we are moving towards EVs, and I think there's a whole separate discussion on the role that Chinese cars play in that, and the role that our auto manufacturers play in that, it's a long-term challenging question that we're going to have to figure out.
Gabe C in our chat says, whoa, if they lift the tariffs on Chinese EVs, it's over for everybody else. Ms. KD says they should make a deal with China to build the EVs in Canada. Shannon, what's your take on it?
Well, that's a really good point. We are really behind the eight ball, given the lack of innovation and, quite frankly, quality that's been on the market from the North American automakers for some time on this. And so now we are in a situation where we've been outcompeted by the Chinese automakers. So, I have a great deal of sympathy for Mr. Ford. There are, about 80% of the auto workers, and there's about, between the direct and indirect, about 500,000 of these folks are in Ontario, and specifically Southern Ontario. And so he is standing up for his province, just as Scott Moe and Wab Kinew are standing up for their province when they say we need to do something about this because the counter tariffs on Canadian canola are bad for our producers. And so, Mr. Carney has a bit of a pickle. He is unlikely, though, to do something that crosses Ford. What we're going to have to do, though, is have an industrial strategy for these auto workers, because the American tariffs are also pummeling the industry. We are no longer the integrated auto market, or at least not if Mr. Trump has anything to do with it. And so we're going to have to make new friends. And to that exact point, it might not be China's automakers that come here and invest in new physical plant, but we really do need a coordinated industrial strategy for the Japanese and the South Koreans, who are our fellow democracies, and with whom we need to expand trade ties if we're going to maintain prosperity as a result of some of the U.S. trade actions that have been, really hard on the auto sector.
All right. In Calgary, Conservatives will gather for the convention January 29th to 31st. Pierre Poilievre will have his leadership review. Then we'll have lots of time to talk about it between now and then, so we'll save it. I know the two of you got to go, so I'm going to ask you for a one-sentence answer, and I want you to really try to stick to one sentence, okay, as we wrap. All things considered, federal NDP leadership race, maybe a slow in the flow of floor crossings, maybe a rejuvenated Conservative Party after that convention, maybe this Carney government looking at an inability to survive consecutive confidence votes. Will we see a federal election in 2026 as early as the spring? Ben, I see a physical reaction from you that our podcast listeners will not have been privy to, so let's put it into words. What do you think?
I'm not sure. How about that? That's my one sentence answer. I think it's possible. But I gun to my head, I would not bet on it. I would say that.
Okay. Shannon?
I think Mr. Poilievre may not survive. He will survive the leadership. He will not, potentially not survive 2026, especially if there is an election that the Liberals could just call. They don't need to fall on a confidence vote.
Right.
They could call it in order to get their majority. And when you look at the numbers, it might be in their interest to do so.
I sure appreciate both of your perspectives. I appreciate your availability. I appreciate what you're doing. Keep up the great work at Meredith Bosanquist Phillips. People can check out mbpolicy.com, and you can find that paywall-free episode of their podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Shannon Phillips, Ben Woodfinden, have a great weekend, and thanks for doing this. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Real Talkers, let us know what you think on this. If you're I keep saying if you're checking this out live on our live stream presented by California Closets, chime in the live chat. Well, you are. The live chat is banging right now, so we're going to get into that on a number of different subjects, but in particular what happened in Minneapolis. This is kind of one of those situations where there's nuance. And when things appear before a court, for example, evidence is evaluated in ways that, and I'm not a lawyer, all I know is that having covered courts for a few years early in my journalism career. I mean, the forensic analysis of crime scenes and how things are evaluated by like millimeters and tiny little, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. We are not equipped, except for the forensic investigators that may be members of our audience. We're not equipped to analyze that stuff. I'm not going to take you frame by frame through this. My perspective or my approach on what happened in Minneapolis, what's happening in Minnesota, what's happening across the United States for that matter right now. I saw someone in our live chat. I've not seen this. This has been while we're doing this. Somebody said there's been another alleged ICE shooting in Seattle as we're talking right now. But this right now, you've got mayors, you've got governors speaking out, not in every state, but in a lot of the states, certainly in the blue states, demanding that ICE leave. You heard Tim Walz, you heard Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, like pulling no punches, dropping F-bombs, telling ICE to get out of his city. And then you have some just real common sense stuff. Shout out to the citizens that filmed this. I mean, people are talking about George Floyd and other circumstances. I look back to Rodney King, whoever videoed that, back when nobody had phones on their cameras. I don't know if anybody's seen, is it No Visible Trauma, this independent documentary that's out right now talking about police brutality in Canada. Spoiler, the entire film is about the city of Calgary, by the way. Calgary has more officer-involved shootings and fatal officer-involved shootings than any other city in North America. And that's not adjusted per capita. Calgary has more officer-involved shootings and fatal officer-involved shootings than New York, than Toronto, than Vancouver. This is a remarkable thing. I just watched that video this week, so that's kind of where my head's at. I actually watched it like hours before everything went down in Minneapolis, and so it's something that's been kind of heavy on my heart and heavy on my head. And while there may not be a lot of sort of, I don't know, ambiguity, gray area kind of thing in this situation in Minneapolis, at least not anecdotally, what I'm observing is that folks are either furious and outraged by what they saw on these citizen videos, these courageous citizens. And by the way, keep in mind, they were not aware. Like, I know I'm stating the obvious here, but I do think it's important to remind us all. They were not aware of what they were about to capture, right? They didn't realize, probably none of them thought that this 37-year-old mother who had just dropped her young child off at school and it sounds like I didn't obviously know this woman. There's a lot of people are talking about her, and you never know. You got to be careful, guys, right? Especially with these social media, we call them the news influencers that jump in and they're doing all these features and talking about this woman. None of us knew this woman, but her friends are doing interviews and saying that she had a real problem with ICE. She had a real problem with ICE being in her city. And the video starts with her vehicle parked in the street at an off angle. She was being uncooperative to a certain degree. That's obvious, but we don't know what was happening before the video, right? None of us have spoken to this woman. We know what's being reported right now and what her friends are saying. But we want to be careful with what information we evaluate here. Try to stick to the facts as best we can. And the fact is, a woman who had a real problem with what ICE was doing in her city was being defiant. Civil disobedience is what we refer to as this. And ultimately, as she tried to leave the scene, I will not entertain any lunacy. And this is a conscious decision of mine. You can make a different decision if you like. But I'm not going to listen to somebody seriously claim that this woman was a domestic terrorist trying to run over ICE agents, trying to kill police officers who were lucky to survive after being treated in hospital. Everybody's seen the video of the ICE agent, and let me say the alleged shooter, because this is how we do this in situations like this. Let me call it up for you on my screen. But the guy walking away after she was shot. Like, this is a guy walking away, and I'll find this here for you so you can see it. But the guy's walking away like an absolute cowboy. Like he's adjusting his mask. He's saying, you better call 911. People can't believe what happened here. There he is right there. This is the alleged shooter right here. Look at this guy. Yep. Waving his fingers. Make sure to pull the mask up so 400 million Americans can't see his face. They will at some point. I know that there's photos that are out right now purporting to be that. Does that look like a guy right now? Look at that. That's the swagger. That's the Calgary Stampede Midway swagger that guy has going on right there. Unholsters his firearm, puts 3 shots into the head, or at least one, a fatal shot into the head. 3 shots aimed at for all intents and purposes, innocent woman. If you want to put up with some technicality about some civil disobedience, about not complying in a very confusing and supercharged scenario with the orders of ICE officers, different orders being barked at the same time, by the way, stop and, to quote the ICE officer, get the fuck out of the way, stop, get the fuck out of the way, get the fuck out of the car, where are you going, what do you do, right? Different, right? It was a nightmare. It was a disaster. But to me, it's absolutely obvious and inarguable that what happened in Minneapolis was a massive overreaction, a deadly overreaction, a lack of judgment by an ICE agent. Now we're hearing from senior level politicians and security, Department of Homeland Security and other experts in the United States. Most of them retired, and you can understand why. I don't know right now if you're going to be speaking out against the Trump administration, if you've got a job in the United States right now that you want to keep. But they're talking about the deplorable lack of training for ICE agents right now, suggesting that as the Trump administration is rolling out more and more agents into American cities, that some of these agents have purportedly been trained for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of training before they're turned loose into the United States, armed, full of bravado, and now operating under the understanding, courtesy of the Vice President of the United States, that they have absolute immunity. So this is where everybody's heads are at right now. And I see in our live chat, powered by Park Power, a reflection of the same thing that I'm feeling, which is that there's not a lot of people in the middle of the road on this one, no pun intended, sort of trying to make up their minds and hearing from this side and hearing from this side and considering all the facts and trying to decide how they feel about it. People are either outraged about this, furious, emboldened and feeling more strongly than ever before about the need for change in American politics and where the American sort of political climate and culture is at, or people that are bending over backwards to justify the actions of the ICE agent and with a straight face suggest that if you're going to obey, or if you're going to disobey the law, you can face the consequences. And the acceptable consequences to these people is a bullet to the forehead or to the side of the head from close range from a masked officer, in a situation, a benign situation for all intents and purposes, where a woman was blocking a roadway. So if we're cool with that, let's be honest. I'm not going to finish that sentence because nobody in their right mind is cool with that, right? In our live chat, Erica says that woman behaved very badly and she should be in jail right now, but she shouldn't be in the morgue. Erica says that's not exactly a hot take. Ms. Katie says, tell me you would have supported the Nazi regime without telling me. I know a lot of people are starting to talk like that right now. A lot of people are really starting to feel like this tragedy is going to be a bit of a tipping point when it comes to what's happening now to American citizens. It sounds a little bit cold and heartless to say that if ICE is dragging away, and this is how people, I'm going to use the word people use, if ICE is dragging away illegals, it's one thing. But once American people start to be impacted by this, let alone killed by it, that could sway a lot of the folks that have been in the middle of the road or staying quiet up until now. And I think that that's something that a lot of people certainly are going to be focusing on and talking about in the days to come. We welcome your thoughts on this to talk at ryanjespersen.com. This is something, Tracy, by the way, says, Jespo, she wasn't blocking a roadway. She says other cars drove right past her, right in front of her car. And that is true, Tracy. And the video shows that she waves a couple vehicles through with her left arm through her driver's side window. Super Chat Ken says real police officers have their badge number visible. They're not wearing masks. They have accountability. They proudly identify themselves. They aren't cowards like these guys. Steph says she sees ICE as the U.S. Gestapo. Says they're just missing the jack boots and the brown uniforms. And then Kyle's trolling. Ryan, go talk to Andrew Harnett's widow. Tell her a car can't kill officers. Hey, Kyle. Obviously, cars can fucking kill people, right? I mean, I reported here in Edmonton about an attempted attack. It was an attack. It was an attempted murder of an Edmonton police officer near Commonwealth Stadium. Do you guys remember this? And a guy with an ISIS flag in his car took a run at an Edmonton police officer, right? Tried to kill him. Obviously, we all know that, Kyle. this is what you're doing is a smokescreen. It's a red herring. It's a bad faith argument. No person in their right mind, no person who's sane, no person who's serious would argue that this woman was trying to kill that police officer, that ICE agent rather. He's not a cop. He doesn't deserve to be called a cop. He's not a cop. He hasn't gone through the training. He hasn't taken that oath. He doesn't protect and serve like honorable, ethically driven police officers are supposed to do. Give me a break. See, this is what you got to look out for, guys. In a lot of situations like this, there's obfuscation. There's muddying the waters, right? Kyle trying to argue here that Ryan Jespersen is suggesting cars can't kill people. I didn't say that, did I? Let's always return to the facts. Let's make sure that when people are introducing bad faith bullshit arguments into what we're talking about, that we call them on it and we call them out strongly, and that we insist that evidence and that common sense, right, empathy are going to be the driving forces in the conversations that we have. I'm going to continue to insist on that. And I know that this audience would expect that we would continue to do that. We have an awesome email from Real Talker Jim to talk@ryanjespersen.com following our Athana Mentzelopoulos interview. Jim has worked for AHS in a leadership position for more than 10 years. He gives us his take. We want to make sure we get to that. We have the draw to do, the early bird winners for our Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. We're going to do that draw. Then we're going to get to the Flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Before we do, there's been an uptick in interest from Real Talkers around the Bridge Healing Program with the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation since we talked about it, and we're thrilled to see it. This is one of the ways that, in particular, the Metro Edmonton region is endeavoring to drop ER wait times, and that is ensuring that Hope has an address. The Bridge Healing Transitional Accommodation Program provides emergency patients, ER patients that are experiencing houselessness with transitional housing, integrated healthcare, and social support. If you go to royalalex.org/bridge healing, you'll see a link to the Real Talk interview where we get to this, including really powerful stuff from Royal Alexandra ER doc, Dr. Louis Francis Cuddy. Again, that's royalalex.org/bridge healing. If you'd like to support this program, we encourage you to check out the website, givetoroyalalex.org. Don't forget, Tuesdays on Real Talk, we present Echoes of the Alex, celebrating 125 years of healthcare at the Royal Alex. Our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy are embracing 2026 in a big way and getting ready for spring when they'll resume installations on residential, industrial, commercial, agricultural properties. Kubi's 2026 installation schedule is already starting to fill up. So if you're hoping to have your system installed in 2026, now is the time to reserve your spot. Booking early means you'll be at the front of the line for next summer's peak production season, so you'll be generating energy and seeing savings right away. Don't miss your chance to secure your system and take advantage of another season of clean energy. You can get your free quote today by checking out kubi.ca. That's kuby.ca/solar. Their team is here to guide you every step of the way. North Road Investment Council wants to make sure that you are paying attention to what went on with the Canadian stock market. Did you know that it returned 31.7%, almost 32% over the last year? Did your Canadian mutual fund outperform that return last year? Probably not, I'm guessing. You know, more and more private clients and institutions are starting to ask these same questions. If most mutual funds aren't keeping up with the benchmark, why not just own the benchmark? At North Road Investment Council, they build customized passive portfolios that are designed to capture index returns, but with a strong focus on tax management and matching your values and preferences, right? So if you've got to exclude a company that you're connected to as an executive, or you want to avoid industries like guns or tobacco or whatever the case is, maybe you want to design your holdings for greater tax efficiencies for families and big institutions with around $2 million or more to invest, North Road Investment Council creates fully customized factor portfolios. You can learn more by connecting with Marshall and Carrie and the team. Learn more about what makes North Road different by checking out northroadic.com. And our friends at California Closets reminding you how proud they are to be a family-owned, Canadian-based business. As a matter of fact, Everything that California Closets is installing is manufactured right here in Alberta and guaranteed for life. That's why so many people have trusted California Closets with a big investment into their home. Your biggest investment is your home, so why not make it work for you with a custom entertainment center, a custom closet, a pantry, a laundry room, a home office, even a garage. California Closets does it all, and there's no risk in sitting down with one of their designers and talking about it. You can talk about the space, show them your Pinterest board, talk about your budget. It's no obligation, nothing but brainstorming and creativity when you request a free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. All right, so we hear from Jim to talk at RyanJespersen.com just a short time after we sit down exclusively with the former CEO of Alberta Health Services, Athana Mentzelopoulos. And Jim says, great interview with Athana. Says, I was in a leadership position of a back office department at AHS for almost 13 years. He says, I left 3 years ago to take a job with a different organization, but of course I still have many friends and colleagues at AHS and the new splintered organizations that it has morphed into. He says, initially, AHS was set up to fail from the start. Here's an insider perspective on this, Real Talkers. A revolving door of leaders, says Jim, and tons of government meddling. When Dr. Verna Yu became CEO, remember her? He says, she took the reins and led AHS through a period of stability. Even as politicians tinkered with a system they didn't fully understand. Sounds familiar. He says, then we had a change of government. And like many at AHS, I can honestly say that with the NDP government for 4 years, for the first time we experienced stability in the healthcare system. We had guaranteed funding for 4 years, we had achievable performance targets, and there was no, really, for all intents and purposes, no tinkering by politicians. Jim says they left politics aside and let us do our job delivering healthcare to Albertans. We were on our way to showing real, measurable improvements in the system. He says Albertans need to know that. It wasn't perfect, for sure. There were still huge hurdles, but we were trying our best, and the government gave us the tools and the distance to do it. The new UCP government and the pandemic, of course, says Jim, changed that. Jason Kenney mishandled COVID, made AHS the scapegoat. Dr. Yu was fired. Kenney couldn't avoid wearing some of his government's failings, so he was punted. With Danielle Smith's government, the attacks on AHS have continued, and they were turned up to 11. Says Jim. As Ms. Mentzelopoulos said on your show, the UCP manufactured even more chaos in the healthcare system, trying to take control, eroding the relationship with physicians, the lab contract issues, questioning vaccines and public health, the continuing care bed shortage, and the like. They placed the blame squarely on AHS alone. Jim says the Alberta government controls the purse strings and requires all of AHS's business plans and activities to obtain government approval. AHS's management was not capable. It was incapable of acting independently. AHS was run by a board of directors that was all appointed by government. He says, now, of course, the chair of that board was meeting regularly with the Minister of Health. It sickens me, says Jim, when the Premier and her proxies attack the staff and the leadership at AHS. Now, of course, her base eats it up because we were an easy target. We were only as good as our latest failing. He says, the Premier in 2023 announced after her intention to fix healthcare that she was going to start by first firing managers. Athana talked to us about this yesterday. He says, how many managers do we have? She said, a direct quote, how many managers do we have who have never seen the eyeballs of patients? Those are the ones who have to pick up their games. She complained that the AHS was too bloated and that the org chart was like 40 pages. He says, well, how does she think that an org with 110,000 employees can be run, right? Managing healthcare is not the same as running a Walmart or managing a McDonald's. Now, we had some managers with more than 100 staff. Can you possibly imagine trying to directly manage 100 people every day? Imagine cutting the number of managers so now someone has 300 staffers to oversee. Jim says, yeah, AHS does have some truly amazing people working there, and we did our best to care for Albertans. During my years, he says, I rarely encountered anybody who wasn't 100% dedicated to delivering their best, whether they worked on the front lines or in the back offices. And that applies both to staff and to managers. To characterize them as anything else, he says, is disheartening. Now, a good leader admits when they made a mistake. A good leader shoulders the blame and works to find a solution. A poor leader blames others. And it was government's past decisions, like a lack of funding, that led to our current situation with the healthcare system. Instead, they're demonstrating poor leadership by blaming AHS leadership for their own policies and decisions. The politicians, that is, because the politicians want to keep their jobs. Jim says, I'm sorry that Ms. Mentzelopoulos went through and continues to go through what she's going through. She sounds like she would have been a great leader to work under. And I'm sorry for my friends and colleagues who are still working in the system and who have to hear this stuff every single day. It is so demoralizing. Working in healthcare is hard enough without being demoralized and attacked every day by politicians. That from Jim, who writes in to talk@ryanjespersen.com. You know, this show is made stronger by your firsthand accounts, by your personal perspectives based on your lived experience, personally or professionally, and we're always grateful. You know, that would have taken Jim some time to type that out, right? Get his thoughts focused, send it into the show. It's not something that we take for granted, and we mean it when we invite you to write in and let us know how what we're talking about, or maybe how what we're not yet talking about, how it's resonating with you or having an impact in your daily life. It means the world to us that you even spend 5 minutes listening to or watching this show, let alone all of them. And we want to reflect that we do believe truly and sincerely that this is your show. This is a platform for real talkers to share their perspectives, for us to better understand one another. And so we invite your feedback. Before we get to the Flamethrower, friends, we do want to remind you, and check this out. I absolutely love this video that we put together. You're about to see here. This is our 2024 Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. Well, the 2026 edition. This video just blows my mind every time I look at it. These beautiful bonfires. Look at this ice, everybody. This is at Larry Alexiak Field out in St. Albert. The city of St. Albert does an amazing job helping us as 24 teams gather to compete for the Lozzie Cup. That's the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic Championship. We've done this every single year that Real Talk's been around, and raising a ton of money proudly for our friends at Kids Sport and uncles and aunts at large. This is a day of Canadiana, the cold beers, the beautiful bonfires, those burgers from our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, tunes from Johnny Infamous, wonderful service, including servers on figure skates making their way through the all-ice beer garden, by the way. From Central Social Hall, you get the idea. This is nothing but vibes all day long. 24 teams of up to 6 skaters competing on ice, but mostly just having a whole bunch of laughs and having a great time. You see that sign there, Apex Automation. We're thrilled to have them returning. The Apex Icebreakers are one of the teams that are going to be out there. 24 in total. Every single year we've done it, it's sold out. And we don't expect that trend to change this year, which means that if you want to get your team out there, it doesn't matter your skill level. I mean, there's some real ringers out there, and there's some, I don't want to say ankle skaters, but you get the point I'm making. Everybody's having a great time. And to be quite honest with you, nobody really cares who wins, except the winners, and we always celebrate them. I've never won this thing. I've had a blast every single time. You're doing it for a great cause. Team registration is $600. You can have up to 6 skaters. All the proceeds, every single cent, goes to charity, courtesy of our amazing sponsors, including our friends at Play Alberta, Molson Canadian, and others. We'll be celebrating all of them day of, and of course after the fact as well. And we'd love to see you there. You can go to our website, ryanjespersen.com, click on the events link, and look for Pond Hockey to sign up your team for the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. That is January 31st. That's a Saturday out in St. Albert. And Johnny, of course, as we do, we have our Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic early bird draw to conduct right here now live on the show. Right. So our early bird prize winners, these are all the teams that registered before New Year's Eve. So we pulled these names. Our organizer, Craig Strain, who does an amazing job, pulled these names. This is as of midnight on December 31st, and there were 10 teams that had registered before that deadline. So we're going to read these out. I'm going to put the teams into the Real Talk toque, and then we're going to draw our winner. This is for the Real Talk Early Bird Prize Pack. There's a ton of stuff involved. You're going to get like a bunch of DQ gift cards. You're not going to pay for a single beer at the Real Talk Pond Hockey championship at the Pond Hockey Classic. I guarantee you that. If you have seen the Golden Bus, you know how excited you should be about this. Have you guys seen this? This is a big city bus that's been converted to a party bus. There's a DJ booth in there. There's a pole. It must be for the pole, I think, for structural purposes to make sure the roof doesn't. That must be what that big silver pole is for. It's all tinted out. It's gold and sparkly on the outside. We booked the Golden Bus to take us to Rogers Place after the Pond Hockey Classic as the Oilers host the Tampa Bay. It's the Minnesota Wild that night. The Oilers and the Minnesota Wild. The winners of our early bird prize have 6 seats on the Golden Bus, 6 seats into Rogers Place to watch the game as well. It's going to be an absolute blast. And so here's who's competing for this. Okay, we've got our Apex Icebreakers. They're going into the Toque here. We have our Everyday We're Buffalin team is going to be competing. We have Cold Brews. Congratulations, Cold Brews. You guys were first to register again this year. You've been first every year. Shout out to Cold Brews. We have Hat Trick Swayze coming back. I like that. A past champion. That's the Solar by Kubi team. We have the Northsiders. The Northsiders have, as a matter of fact, Johnny, the Northsiders have won several times at the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. We have Riel HC. Riel HC. I think this is a bunch of St. Albert hockey dads. We have the Done Right Express Powerhawks. The Done Right Express Powerhawks. Best of luck to you. We have ABB, Team ABB. You are in the mix. We have Dangladesh, which is a fantastic name for a Pond Hockey Classic entry. Dangladesh and Soft Dump. They're talking about gaining the zone, snow, or something else. I have no idea. So here you have it. We have the 10 different names in the hat in this Real Talk Toque. I'm going to swirl them around. And of course, at random, we are going to draw one winner. This will be the winner of the Real Talk Early Bird Prize, including 6 tickets to the Oilers game that night, bus transport, free beers, free burgers, and a whole lot more. And ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the 2026 Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic Early Bird Prize is the Apex Icebreakers. That is the team entry from Apex Automation. And if memory serves me correct, this is back-to-back jacks for the Apex Icebreakers. They were also the winners, unless memory fails me, of the 2025 Early Bird Prize, too. This is a remarkable return to the winner's circle for the Apex Icebreakers. Congratulations, guys. We'll be in contact with you when it comes to manifesting that big prize you've just won. And again, Real Talkers, we'd love to have you at the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic on the 31st of January. Thanks to everybody who signed up for the early bird. And of course, spectators are welcome day of as well. We'll be posting about it on social media, and I'll remind you before the 31st of January. As we wrap every week here on the show, we do it in, well, fired up fashion, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. These are your hottest takes. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. And we lead off with this one from Denise. Denise says, Ryan, I'm absolutely appalled by what we're watching out of Minnesota. An ICE agent kills somebody in broad daylight. It's on video, on clear video, multiple angles, no ambiguity, and yet here we are being told again not to believe our own eyes. Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, J.D. Vance, and their loyal chorus of sycophants are lining up to lie to Americans, insisting the use of force was justified, necessary, even heroic, while the rest of us are watching a woman lose her life at the hands of the state. This isn't spin anymore. This is gaslighting. George Orwell warned us about this. Quote, the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. Denise says that's exactly what's happening right now. We're being told the video doesn't show what it clearly shows. We're being told that violence is restraint. We're being told accountability is weakness. We're being told that unquestioning obedience is patriotism. And what's most disturbing is how many people are cheering it on. Donald Trump didn't normalize this. He built a movement around it. Kristi Noem didn't defend it. She wrapped it in the language of law and order. J.D. Vance didn't just excuse it. He moralized it. They're lying knowingly because the truth is inconvenient to their politics. If video evidence doesn't matter anymore, then nothing does, says Denise. If accountability disappears the moment a badge is involved, then justice is already dead. And if you're still defending this, if you're still pretending that this is fine, then don't talk to me about freedom. Don't talk to me about Christian values. Don't talk to me about American values, because what you're defending looks a hell of a lot more like authoritarianism than it does democracy. Unbelievable email from Denise. Thank you for that. How about this one from KP, who says, Jespo, the Venezuelan socialist, narco lord dictator, fucked around and found out, getting nabbed by the Dawn. And God, to say it was a great day is an understatement. KP says the U.S. incursion lasted no more than 80 minutes in the country. They picked up Maduro, his wife, and they destroyed Chavez's grave. Some could say it started when Maduro's nephews were caught trying to smuggle nearly 2,000 pounds of coke into the U.S. Others say it was the trade of sanctioned oil and arms using the shadow fleet, which led to the legal boarding and seizures. The real idiots would say that striking fishing boats carrying drugs along known drug routes and with no rods. That from KP. But he says, man, I don't care what started it. The Venezuelan people are dancing in the streets, and white communists and liberals are sad that their dream leader will spend the rest of his days in a supermax. Who knows? Maybe he's looking forward to that. Iran is next to be overthrown, says KP. People there are begging Trump with stickers to take out the Ayatollah and Maduro him, or even Bin Laden him. I didn't know those were verbs. He says the world is healing with the demise of progressivism and the destruction of dictatorships. He says, okay, yeah, anyway. And then ends with something that I'm not going to read. But KP, I don't know. Anyway, I don't respond a lot to flamethrowers. I will say this. We talk about the bigger impact that what happened, the tragedy in Minneapolis is going to have. You're decrying you're celebrating what you describe as the demise of progressivism. I think it might move in the different direction. It might move in the opposite direction. We'll see. Thanks for your email, KP. What about this one from Don, who says, Jespo, I don't want to sound like a fearmonger, but we should, as a citizenry, seriously start thinking about World War III, because it's coming. Says Don. I know that I sound alarmist in this, but there's like really clear signs and political steps that are being taken to prove my hypothesis. He says, now I'm a nobody. Don, come on, buddy. No, you're not. He says, I'm a nobody with a moderate understanding of history, but even I can lay out a path to this happening. And if I can, others can. If you're interested, he says, I would love for us to do a show on this and maybe explore that theory about looming World War III. I don't know, Don. Sure. He says, but I don't know. I just thought that I should issue this cautious reminder to Real Talkers. I am not a conspiracy theorist. I am just a realist. I like that from Don. Don, you're getting us thinking here. How about this one? Joe from Airdrie says, Jespo, I don't care what people say. You can say Happy New Year all the way through January as far as I'm concerned. Well, thank you very much, Joe from Airdrie, and a Happy New Year to you, buddy. Says, there ought to be a law in Canada that you only get one independence referendum per century, okay? We all know that these independence, earmuffs, kids. Can we all agree kids shouldn't ever be listening to the flamethrower, okay? Joe from Airdrie says, these independents... Actually, I'm not going to use the word. Yeah, for once in my life, I'm going to censor it. Let's say idiots. He says, won't take no for an answer. We're going to be going through this over and over and over and over again until either they win, he says, or they die. He says, hopefully of natural causes after a very long life. Thank you, Joe, for demonstrating that grace to your fellow humans. He says, having a law that would create a 100-year gap between referendums will make sure that people think really hard about putting these things to a vote and risking the demolition of this great nation, all the investment in our province and the security of all of us. And he says, and I'm talking about Quebec as well. As for Jeff Rath, that lawyer, the separatist lawyer, and all his little friends, sure, what he's doing may not technically be treason, but the feds can revoke someone's passport for any reason. Take away their passports, trap them in this beautiful country that they hate. Win-win, says Joe. No more idiotic talks with the Americans, and maybe they'll touch grass and actually see this beautiful country and change their minds about wanting to leave it. From Joe from Airdrie. I don't support the seizure of passports in this circumstance for what it's worth, but if people want to tear up their passports themselves, they're more than free to do so if Canada's such a lousy place to be, right? And this one from Mr. Dad will bring us home. Mr. Dad says, Jespo, in light of the recent second catastrophic failure of Calgary's feeder main water line, I hope that government planners and officials at every level are considering the obvious role that this recent unsustainable population growth has likely played in this crisis. Calgary's population has more than doubled since that feeder main was first constructed. And when a city's population is drastically increased without corresponding infrastructure upgrades, disasters like this should be expected. Mr. Dad says this also raises the question of why developers who are making obscene profits from blanket rezoning policies are not responsible for a greater share of these costs. They're going to come at you with talk about property taxes and all that kind of stuff, Mr. Dad, but I'll digress. He says even after this feeder main is replaced, where will the water come from for 500,000 new residents that Calgary plans to attract? Flows in the Bow and Elbow rivers have reached record lows. Mr. Dad says if there's anything people need to keep in mind, double the city, double the trouble. That from Mr. Dad, who brings us home on this episode of The Flamethrower, proudly presented by the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. When you stop in for a Flamethrower signature stack burger and a score blizzard, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. We're going to be off, of course, for the next couple of days to Jasper National Park as we celebrate the official kickoff to Jasper in January. Follow me on Instagram for updates on my stories. I'm going to be posting everything I see, including snow reports, anecdotal ones with powder up to my knees, I'm hoping, from Marmot Basin. And of course, back on Monday is Supriya Dwivedi, who was on The Social yesterday. Bit of a big deal. Well, between now and then, Real Talkers, we wish you well and one love.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton.